Oh, hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Good morning, good evening, afternoon. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. With your sensei, Al Bob, we'll be out here to tell you a story. And, ooh, baby, it's toasty. Now, I'm in a place in the mountains that usually doesn't, even the summertime, doesn't get above 80 something. It's been in the 90s the last week and a half, and it rains. And luckily, it rains every day, 3 or 4 times, which cools it off. But we are right in this little crack of the accordion between the Appalachian Mountains and the Blue Ridge. And it's right where all the weather from the West Coast comes straight across America, straight across 80% of America, and then hits about 100 or so miles west of me on I-40 and splits. It either bounces up north and goes into New York and Ohio, or bounces south and goes North Carolina up the eastern seaboard, up through Virginia and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York, and then up Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, out into the Atlantic. So the sun has been very strange. There's a Thor, your weather commander. He's very good at telling what's going on in the weather that the major media doesn't. Oh, it's going to be sunny tomorrow. This guy really talks about the sun. He talks about all the different influences, the magnetic, hydrodynamic characteristics of the planet. And there's another guy, Oppenheimer Report or something like that. And that's Diamond. And he's the grandson of the grandpa of the atomic bomb. And he's a scientist too. He was in NOAA and all the weather. He's in NOAA. He's a scientist, weather scientist, big time. So he's out there in New Mexico or Nevada or someplace out in the mountains. He's got water and he's got his little garden. He's got his goats, and he's like just ready for the end of the apocalypse. And here in the deep green I'm in a similar state, but the rich folk are closer than those two guys. They're out in the middle of nowhere. I'm just in the middle of heaven, right? And and I'm on my neighbor. He's been having lots of people stay here, and the last day or two I didn't notice anybody, so I decided to just give it a shot and get on his porch and say hi to you guys. I have no money, down to a goose egg in my checking account. So if you could send something on the old PayPal, that would be really great. And that's the dudeawake42 at Gmail. Dudeawake42 at Gmail. Dudeawake at 42 at Gmail. It's still working. Somebody a couple of weeks ago sent something, and that was good. I don't really go on about it. I could use it really right at this time, and usually it works out just in the nick of time. So, can't go too long with a goose egg in the old checking account. Otherwise, they get rid of that. And then I can't really get another checking account. So it would be nice if somebody could throw something in there. It's, good old PayPal, the dudeawake42 at Gmail, dudeawake42 at Gmail. So how you all doing? You sweating a lot? The earth underneath us, there was a giant, 7 earthquake in the Philippines, and that is on the edge of the dragon, and I've been seeing about 2 weeks ago. So I've been having my been having operations, medical, and that's also just the gas alone to get there has cost me half of my Social Security check last month. So, but I got nobody to drive me, so I, basically did it myself. And so I drove back, and I had to pretend I had somebody because when they operate, they don't want you to be, because they kick you out and then expect somebody to drive you. And I said, oh yeah, they're out waiting for me across the street. So anyway, I had to drive home. But and so I was driving 2 weeks ago back. I couldn't see anything. So, but I knew the road like every bump. So, I knew this turn, that turn. And I kind of came up to a stop sign and I knew it was there, but I didn't realize I didn't stop. Normally, I was a EMT fireman, and they sent me off to fire engine school, so I was really taught how to drive, and it did break a lot of my bad New York City habits of impatience. They showed that if you were driving 10 miles, and the difference between the speed limit and doing 70 was getting there in a minute sooner, but the odds of you killing yourself and wrecking the $500,000 fire truck was jacked up by 60%. So anyway, plus, in those 3 years, I dealt with more because our house was right. There was two interstates, 91, and I forget the other one. And instead of cloverleaf, they just put an X. The one road went this way and the other. So big truck going this way. Some guys come, oh, I got to turn, zip in front of that truck. The truck wouldn't even see it, run them over, or a motorcycle would do it. We responded to at least 3 to 15 horrific car crashes a week for 3 years, right? The other thing we went to was up on the hill was the retiree home, but it was for guys, who had no money. So the retiree home was a single wide 1963, a mobile home, not the best. And they would be rented out, and the guy who ran it, he said he was a old folks home, and he was had meals and healthcare for them. And no, he threw a box of band-aids at him, and gave him a soggy peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day, right? And so those people would off themselves. Now, good old Second Amendment guaranteed everyone to have a car. So the car that would have been nice. Second Amendment guaranteed everyone to have a car. That would be good. Now, guaranteed everyone, they could have a gun, right? So that really isn't what the Second Amendment does. Second Amendment guarantees that rich white men can have a nicely attuned, mercenary group of people that would keep their property in place. Down south before before the Revolutionary War between 1878 76. Um, this America was like from Maine down to south, heading towards the west, and the South was the richest at King Cotton, and they ruled. They had in 1864, I think it was, Mississippi alone created $2 billion worth of wealth. Not after paying all the bills and everything, 2 billion that year for the plantation owners, right? They owned 70% of the New York City Stock Exchange. So, they kept, threatening the New York City Stock Exchange that if you don't do what we want, we're just going to pull out, and then you'll have no money and see you later. Bye. And so, you think things are weird today? So it's been ever since, right? We basically run under Babylon banking, right? And Babylon was a misfit of a empire in that it had access to technology they shouldn't have because the makers, the advanced ones, the folks who came from other places. You read the Old Testament, you read Kings, right? They had this big list of kings, about 3,000 kings, and they all lasted. Each one of those kings had a lifetime of somewhere between 15 and 60,000 years. That's a lot of time, right? And back in the part where they're talking about, the beginning of, and in the dark, this was happening, and then there was this, and then man, God made man, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you really read it, it's never in a singular form. It's saying the gods, right? And then there was a time when these gods, this one crew of the gods, called Nephilim came down and had sex with the pretty monkeys, right? And and that was, a tip of the hat to genetic engineering. And that's kind of what we are. Go read your Bible, folks, instead of, and Luke John 14 says, stop quoting it, start living it, if you're going to read it. And why don't you read it? I read it every day, you know. I pray, you know, at least 5 to 20 times a day, meaning I put God's love in my heart and Jesus's forgiveness in my head, and I give thanks to both, right? That's prayer. I put that presence, right? My conscious awareness of that love and that forgiveness that's inside of me, right? So, and that keeps me from being a puddinhead, right? What would Jesus do? Yeah, and that's a great little thing. Don't make fun of it. If you come up against a trying situation, say that, right? And forgiveness will heal. No, forgiveness will heal everything, right? The thing that's going on in Ukraine is just a scam, right? It's a bunch of folks who want to grab control. I mean, we basically have control of the planet and basically have had control of the planet for at least a million years. What they don't have is the control of the spirit, right? Now they've done everything, between drug addiction and every kind of addiction to get people wigged out on not understanding that the existence of their presence here is that of love's co-creation, right? And nobody's watching, and we've been on here for 11 minutes and 58 seconds. And welcome aboard to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, right? And again, I ask you to send something to my PayPal, right? And if they ask you, it's not I don't charge for this. This is not a service. Whatever you send me is a gift. So you might inform PayPal that this is a gift, right? It's like you're sending your grandson or your son or your friend some money. I am your friend, right? I am your sensei, but I am your friend, right? And I give unto you freely, right? I don't charge a nickel for this, right? So, I've been watching. So I was driving home, right, pretty much blind, and I came up to this stop sign, and it was there. I stopped, and I thought I'd stopped, but I didn't, right? And then I pulled out, and there was a guy. I didn't see him because he was speeding. He was zipping down this road, like he was on the other side of the hill. And by the time I thought I stopped, and then took off, he was like right on my bumper, and he was blasting his horn. And he was doing this, and I was like looking around, and so I just kind of pulled off to the side, and he shot by and screamed, and road rage, right? And you know, and so I kind of got back on the road and I was putting along, and then all of a sudden there's the blue lights behind me, right? And I pulled off right away once I noticed, and then um, the guy, I pulled over in such a way so he wouldn't get hit by a car. So that was a nice gesture for me to do to the cops. I could, if I was like, I hate cops, I could have placed that car because where I pulled over there wasn't a lot of room. I could have put it in such a way. I mean, I put my car closer to the road so he could be on that side. I mean, if I had pulled all the way to that side, he'd still be like in the road. So I protected him with my car, right? So, and I put down that window, right? So he walks up and he kind of leans in and looks around. He goes, "Do you live in this car?" I said, "Well, kind of, but not really." And he said, "What's that mean?" I said, "Well, I, have a little, you know, bit of paradise out in the deep green, but I'm camping. I don't have a house, which I don't, but it is Cadillac camping. I do have water. I do have a toilet. I do have illumination. Do have a kitchen. It's very. I mean, it is the best for spring, summer, and fall. Into this, that End of December, January, February, that's a little, about 8 months. But even, February can be 70 degrees, we're having, earth changes, I would say I've been here now, I've had this property for almost 20 years, and I've been here now for 3 years in the winter, right? And, you know, there may be 20 days that it's, 10 below zero for 4 or 5 days straight, right? And snows and ices and power. Well, and I'm very lucky in that my power comes from a source that doesn't go out, right? So, I got that. And the heat is, it's so where I sleep, it is in the direct sun. So even if it's 20 degrees below zero and the sun is out in direct, this thing, I've covered the neck of the woods where I sleep with black. That's how it actually heats that little box up to about 70 degrees. Solar power is pretty much with no moving anything, just blackness on the box, and that the box is not really super insulated. I mean, it has about that much insulation, but it has no windows or it's and it will the sun gets off of it around 4 o'clock, and it'll almost be 80 degrees, right? And then it will stay warm ish. It'll stay into the it'll go 80s into the 70s. It'll stay 70 until about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then and depending on how cold it is out there, but if it's super cold and if the wind is blowing, that wind chill can get you. Then the temperature kind of you know kind of gets off of the thing. So by midnight, it's 40 degrees in there, but still 40s is not bad. So that's when I go. I have two really good sleeping bags that I put myself in, and then I have this other like super survival thing. It's like a sleeping bag, but it's just made out of mylar. I slip that over that bag, and then I put this really other big bag on top of that, and then I pile all my clothes on top of me, and then I'm toasty as to get out and go to the bathroom. That's a different story. So I meditate and I tang. I'm I usually go to bed at 10 o'clock ish when it's still maybe 60 or 58 degrees, and I sleep until it's until I wake up screaming in pain. And every morning I wake up screaming in pain because I have diabetes, neuropathy, Charcot legs, a whole bunch of other things, endocrinology issues. But that pain is a blessing, and that I have to meditate and pray for anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour to reassess and reset my homeostasis, right? So um, that's what I do every morning. Every morning I do that. And in the summer and spring and fall, it's not as bad, right? The mediating factors aren't as severe as in the winter. So though this place has turned back to a rainforest, so it rains. We get at least an inch of rain a day in the last 3 weeks, right? And so I'm getting a little soggy. I have no shower, no bathtub, none of that, and I wear the same thing all the time, and so I'm getting a little. But when we were invented, cavemen did not have showers, right? So your body gets along. I haven't had a shower since last January, and I'm fine. I don't smell. I don't. I mean, I sweat if I'm out there working and it's hot, and I can, hose myself down, but that's not a shower. I mean, my hose is 200 foot when it's in the sun, and I turn that water on at first. That first 200 feet of hose water, that's pretty toasty, And I don't run it continuously. I kind of turn the hose on and wetting myself down, and then I soap up, and then I wet myself down, and then I soap myself up, and then I wet myself down, and then rub that, and then hose myself down, and then rub that, hose myself down, and now it's starting to get cool, and I do that. And then the last time I hose my top, that water's cold, which is nice when it's like 90 something degrees out. I mean, I'm going to go do that after I talk to you guys. So that is, that's life in reality, and so. And when gas wasn't that expensive, I would go out 2 or 3 times a week, run errands, buy meager amounts of food, and go talk to. I have a group of people I go talk to here and there and everywhere. And then when I'm out and about, I'll be at the supermarket. I'll see somebody at the supermarket, and I'll strike up a conversation, and then I will, um, you know, um, read their palms. Like today, I was out helping someone, and they had to do something else. So I went and got something for them, and then came back. And as I was driving up their driveway and parking, there was a person who was coming there to fix something, right? And he was coming out of the car, and he was having a bad day, right? Road rage kind of a bad day, right? And I looked at him, and he was like a maintenance guy, right? And so, it looked like it said mechanical, right? So in mechanical, there's HVAC, there's plumbing, there's electric, right? So I'm an electrician. So I go, so are you an electrician? And he goes, no, I don't touch that. And I said, so you're a plumber? And he said, how do you know that? I said, well, you got your truck, see what's on your rack. You have things that point out that you're a plumber, and your truck says mechanics. And if you're not, air conditioning, you're either HVAC or a plumber, and the stuff on top of your truck points to plumbing. And he goes, wow. And I said, let me look at your palm. So I look at his palm, and I read him, and he nearly freaking falls over, right? And then I start saying, things about more detailed about his life, about his relationships and this and his children and the that and the this and the that. And he starts to cry, right? I get out, I give him a hug, and then I start telling him other stuff that is funny about what he's going through, and that this is an opportunity, and this is the thing with his kids. This is an opportunity, a trial, by fire. You can actually have some good times, because my family, I'm the one person who, in all of my brothers and sisters and my parents, who were like, I was lucky. Oh man, that charcoal leg, baby. Kind of, I was always at my grandma's, so I didn't get the full blast of my. Did any of you guys have seen a movie, the Great Santini? That was my dad. How in that movie, Duvall kept, that was my dad. He had hypoglycemia, he had a few other things. He had severe PTSD from World War II. He was the guy. He didn't fly airplanes, but he sent everyone off to die. And then he had to sit there and listen to them when they would be debriefed. It was like, and he would send these guys out in B-24s that were death traps, and the ME-109s that had cannons would shoot, come straight at a B-24 because they didn't have a gun in the front until they stuck one on there, and because Henry Ford was saving some money, and so the plane would fly straight at him with a cannon and shoot cannon shells into the pilot's cabin. And it's not hard, a shell this big that explodes once it goes into that pilot's cabin. So these guys would get their heads blown off, their arms blown off, and they'd still be flying the airplane, right? If you ever watched the movie 12 O'Clock High with Gregory Peck, there's a scene where this guy is being debriefed, and he's describing exactly that scene. And I watched this movie with my dad with the movies, and my dad went into PTS shock. He went comatose. He went back there. And I was the only one in the family who understood this. Even my mother, she didn't really fucking care. As long as she had her cigarettes and booze and was in charge, that's all that counted. So me, I was blessed. I never really was around my folks. I mean, very, very little. First 7 years of my life was my grandma. Came back at 7. I remember I was there a week. My dad tripped over me because I was a little kid. He looked down and go, who are you? He didn't even know who I was. And they said, "You don't belong here." Now, most kids who would have the experience of their father telling them, "Who are you? You don't belong here." That would have been it. They would become a psychopath by the time they're 20. Me, I spent the first most important years of my life with my grandma, who was super unconditional loving, and who walked me all around New York City and took me to all the museums. And I was super enculturated, and I, was up there in Harlem over on the west side. There were all the universities, and I hung out in those. Columbia's up there. All of the theological, the Jewish theological, the you know, um, Bishop Kaufman and his big cathedral, and his theological school was amazing. And I just hung out there with those brilliant people. And instead of having some whack job trying to teach me, I had these people teaching me not just how to read, but Latin and Greek and Hebrew, because there was a Jewish Lubavitcher up there. And so when I did go home at 7 and they put me in Catholic school, a nun frigging murdered me, crushed my esophagus, which still I have issues with, broke the orbit of my eye, and that's why I'm blind in this eye, but I could see other things with it, right? And made me deaf in this ear. Again, I can hear other things with this, and that's why I have this sensory net that most people don't have, right? You have 5, you have senses of 5, right? Touch, smell, taste, sight, hearing, right? 5. I have the 6 and above, right? So, and then they, again, I didn't get sent back to my parents and next to death with them. I was sent up to a Maryknoll seminary. It was called a sanctuary. And it wasn't just all guys, it was nuns and men, nuns and priests. And the nuns didn't wear the penguin suit, they wore civvies. Priests didn't wear the collar, they wore civvies. And they were all brilliant in whatever their discipline was. So there was an autonomic PhD guy who was all about getting deaf people to hear. There was a speech therapist, got me to speak. There was a respiratory, and these were all not just like nurses or technicians. These were guys who had many PhDs in these disciplines because they were there to serve, right? And the Catholic Church basically invests in knowledge, right? And that's what I was, I was going to be a rocket scientist for the Pope, my godfather, Cardinal Cushing. And I had that guy always watching out, so he'd always pick my butt out of the fire because he had power. He was a cardinal. He was 3 hats from the Pope, right? So I had that whole life from 0 to 10. That was my life. And I had just these little intermittent moments with my biological nuclear family, which, if you put it all together, I wasn't there more than a year and a half. And when I was 8, 9, and 10, I would spend the summers either with my great aunt, who was like, do you ever see the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, right? And there's Mr. Potter. That was my aunt, but she was worse than Mr. Potter. She was the angel of death. But that was her gig. But she had a twin brother that I looked exactly like. And I think the only person she really had love with was with her twin. And he died in the Spanish-American War. And so when I showed up as a little kid, she was just sweet as punch, and she spent all her time with me. So she wasn't mean to anybody. She owned everything in 3 counties. She owned all 4 banks. She owned all the property, all the businesses. She controlled everyone. And my mother was brought up by her, and that's why my mom was just like her, but different. So that was my life, right? Which is not like anybody else's, right? So then from 10, 11, 12, 13, I came back, and my parents had moved from where they were into a nice big house in a very beautiful. My dad was hitting the big time. He was making some serious money, and so they had a great house. We lived in a great place in Long Island, right on the border of Nassau and Suffolk County. So the big farms were there, and there were estates, super rich people, super rich schools. And the public schools were really, really good. And the one I went to was not only really, really good, it was in change, in flux. It was had been a very rural school, so it was like a lot of little red schoolhouses, and now they were centralizing it. So what had been the big high school now become the public school. They built a brand spanking new middle school and a brand spanking new high school. And I went to school there at third grade, and because of the way it was structured, the little red schoolhouses. When I got there, because I didn't go to any of them, there were factions in the grammar school, right? Of the different red schoolhouses, right? Like, and so the cliques, and so can I sit? No, no. So there's a table over there, empty. I sat down. Didn't bother me. I had a book to read. I took out a book, started reading it. I'm in third grade. I'm reading a book. Eating my peanut butter jelly sandwich because that's all my mom could care of making for us. And this kid walks up. He goes, "Are you new here?" I said, "Yep. First day." "Me too. Can I sit with you?" I said, "Nobody wants to sit with me." I said, "Fine." I look at this kid and he's wearing a suit. And I said, "Okay, well, sure." He goes, "Hi, I'm JP." I said, "Hi, JP. I'm Al." And so he pulls out his lunch and he has like sourdough black bread and and meatloaf and medicinal cheese, goat cheese, and lettuce that came from her mother's garden. And anyway, and a piece of pie and a thing of cooked vegetables. And he looks over and goes, "Is that a peanut butter jelly sandwich?" And I go, "Yeah." Because, "You want to trade lunches?" And I go, "Yeah." Right. Anyway, so we're getting along famously, and he's just talking along. And he goes, "You want to see my gun?" And I still can't talk very well, right? And all those years from first grade, from I guess I was 8ish until I was 11ish. I didn't really speak. I mean, I could speak, but I would speak pretty. I because I don't speak like you guys do. I don't. You hear me, and you can tell I'm speaking a little strange. Because my voice box and my esophagus is like not where everyone else's is, right? So and the other thing was that it affected me psychologically. So I had a really severe stutter. So to overcome my ability to not be able to speak, and when I tried to just you know that speech therapist, and so he said, and he was the real number one guy. He realized that I was very young. I didn't learn, but I self hypnotized myself because I would sit there about to put my shoes on, and I had the sock in my hand, and I would just kind of rub it against my leg, and it would put me in a hypnagogic state like that, just like that. And there's certain parts of your body you can just rub or touch, bango, there you are, right? And hypnagogic state, very close to being in a meditative state, right? Meditative state is a little more conscious, aware. I am, right? So anyway, this guy realized I did that. He watched me do it, right? I mean, unconsciously. I kind of was sitting in the chair. I wasn't talking because I couldn't talk too well, and when I tried, I did right. And so he realized this, and then he taught me how to be consciously aware, putting myself in that state, and in conscious awareness, I could be really, really really clear about what words I use. And I think you might have noticed that when I speak, even expectation, off the cuff, saying that word, um, my vocal cords aren't designed to do it, right? And if I try too hard, right? So I don't traumatize myself by using words. Now, in writing on the keyboard, man, I use every big word there is in the universe. So I'm very clear and precise about the words I use because that keeps me from stuttering. Right? So I nearly died, and this nun was actually a Nazi. I mean, she was part of the rat line. The Catholic Church spirited 7 million Nazis out of Europe because they had um, skill sets. Werner von Braun is a very good example of a person who had a skill set. Now, Werner was a nice Nazi. He really wasn't a Nazi. No, he was nasty, because he had a factory underground that over close to a quarter million people he worked to death. They were Germany was pushing out more war materials um, than they were at the beginning of the war. We had been bombing Germany into oblivion, but they put all their manufacturing underground, Spear and a few others, right? And they had, the ASMA, the secret organization that's like our DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Program. That's straight up Nazis, right? And the 1947 National Security, that was codifying the Nazis. That's where they invented, put CIA, NSA, all of those things, COG, continuation of government. That was, so, that's where we are today. And we've been here, since at least, George Washington. That guy was, all the founding fathers, scumbags. At least Ben Franklin was a party animal, right? The only reason the French came in on our side is he went to Paris as a representative, and instead of being a jerk, uptight moron like Jefferson, he basically, everyone was floored by he understood kind of quantum physics. I mean, he understood, when you read his work, he talks about the vacuum. He understood about zero because he read all the old stuff, right? And he saw that the ancient times they had some pretty wicked. I mean, he understood that the pyramids in the Valley of the Kings were weapons. Weapons. The Orc Belt is basically fragments of the major planet that got obliterated. Why people really lose their gaga over Star Wars is because George Lucas sat at the feet of Joseph Campbell, and Joseph told him this whole story, just like he told me. I was a student of his, and he, go read Joseph Campbell's The Myth of the Hero. Right? Go read Dr. Quigley's, another teacher of mine from the CFR. He wrote a great book called Hope and Tragedy that lays it all out. What's going on? I mean, you can look it up on the internet. Yeah, Joseph Campbell, Dr. Quigley, CFR, Hope and Tragedy, right? And I used to work for an entity that can't be named, but it was the brainchild of the guys at the starts with a T. It's where mind control was really codified. What was the name of that place? It came out of the Thule Society and then went to England and became because the English guys brought a lot of Nazis. And if you ever see, and good old the guy Marvel, Mr. Marvel, Stan Lee. I mean, all his work is about what's going on. Captain America, Hail Hydra. I mean, that is straight up what it is, kids. Go watch those 3 movies. It is what it is. You see all the congressmen and senators giving the secret handshake, go, Hail Hydra. That's what it is. We had the best legislators money can buy. And then we have guys like Jeffy, who had Lolita Express, blackmailing all these guys into doing horrifically bad things, right? So that's what we're going through right now. And right now, because of, and most of this stuff, because they're so tied to things like the Masons are like, forget about it. They're just, the Walmarts of the esoteric. And, but it gives a flavor of what it is. Why did Stanley Kubrick, he died after he was going to make this other movie called AI, which would have blown your shorts off. And but he had just finished a movie called Eyes Wide Shut, and basically they took out 30 minutes that would have basically told everyone what's going on, and that's why he died. He died after he finished that movie. The powers that be got to look at the whole thing. He had a contract that he couldn't touch anything. As long as he was alive, he shouldn't have put that in the contract. And then he was dead. And then they cut that 30 minutes out. And then the next movie that was already in progress to be made, they handed over to Spielberg, who is Spielberg only because, I mean, he was a second rate moron working for that guy who made drive in movies, you know? And that pretty much half of all the great, quote unquote, great directors of Hollywood worked for. I forget his name, but he was a great guy. And, but he made all of those, you know, grade B. He was the king of grade B movies, drive-ins, right? And he backed the really good guys who did the same movies like Dawn of the Dead, or not Dawn of the Dead, whatever that first zombie movie was, right? That was a great movie, right? I mean, great, because it was all that handheld stuff because he had no money. He had a 60 millimeter Bolex. That was it, right? So now they're trying to imitate that. So anyway, none of this stuff that we are going through right now is any different than all the stuff we've gone through before. You know, I was in New York City in 1970 when New York City went bankrupt. One day they had 30,000 cops. The next day they had 8,000 cops. Talk about danger. Danger, danger, Will Robinson. I live in a neighborhood that every week 5 people were murdered. If they did not know you, you were dead. And, you know, I became very social in that neighborhood. Everyone got to know me. I had a lot of skill sets that people needed, so they didn't kill Al, you know? And there weren't that many crazies. Now, there are more crazies than, they're not really more, but they're more visible, more out there. The majority of crazies were locked away in, rubber rooms. But then, you know, to get, the rich people more money, good old Ronald Reagan, just with a swipe of a pen, got rid of the safety net of mental. We have no mental health in this country. He got rid of it in 1982. I had a building in a place called Sayville, Long Island. And Sayville, the east, it was close enough to like the Hampton-ish area up here. It's like maybe 40, 50 miles to Hamptons. But the rich stuff was coming this way, the stores and the this and the that. I mean, they didn't want to drive all the way to New York. They wouldn't even drive all the way another 40 miles to the Miracle Mile in Nassau County. So they were was coming that way. So I bought buildings that my father and I built because I kept coming up with these great business ideas from my dad. He never took it. You know, like he had this great apartment in 67, right? I mean, amazing apartment, 3 bedrooms, 22nd floor, had 3 working fireplaces, and it was like a hotel. Meaning, you know, you came in, you know, you drove into the lobby, and they opened the door for you, and they carried you to the elevator. It's an automatic elevator, but they had an elevator operator anyway. They had a desk where instead you have to go in a box with a key, they had your stuff, you know, packages, you know, here's your dry cleaning. And they had their own laundry. So they had a service elevator because pretty much all the rich people had servants. And by the kitchen, there was like a closet that the maid could live in. And they had a back door that she came in. She didn't go through the same door you did. And, you know, she stayed in the kitchen. And when you were gone, she cleaned the house. But she would take all the laundry, put in a bag. There was a little slip of paper. You marked off how many shirts, how many of this, how many of that, how you wanted it done. You put it in there. You push the button. The guy in the service elevator would come up, get it. They would launder it. It would be at that door in boxes and bags and on hangers within 2 hours. So that's where my parents lived. And my dad was paying $800 a month for that in 1968. Well, he's doing pretty good. That's not, you know, that would be maybe about $1,200 today. Maybe more. Not today, but you know, let's say 2010, it would have been $1,200. So anyway, they were going to turn it into a co-op, and my dad, I'm not going to join this. And the deal they were giving the people who already lived there was unbelievable. You would get to own your apartment, and they would hold the paper. You wouldn't have to put any money up. All you'd have to pay is your mortgage, which would be $300. So he would not have to pay, you know, and then he'd still own this. Now, I'm not going to do that. I'll find a better place. And he did. He went on to Park. He wanted to be on Park Avenue. This was on 69th Street between Lexington and 3rd. And so he basically found another place. and like the Golden Corral or whatever they called it, and he was there, right? So about 5 years later, I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, and right there is a picture of his apartment, because his apartment had three fireplaces. The others had maybe one or two, but just one in the living room, one in the master bedroom, and one in the guest suite. Right? It was a guest suite. Each had their own bathrooms, and anyway, so I go to my dad, and every Friday I would come home and have dinner because my grandma would be there. She'd be sleeping in um, you know, the maid's closet, and my sister had gotten home from college. She graduated school. She went to this Harvard of Catholic schools for women, right, in Washington D.C., a place called Trinity, and she was the top of her frigging class, right, and she was working on her PhD in psychology, right, and my dad said, "Oh, you should, forget that. Just, come home, get a job, and get married, right?" So she's top. This is like Harvard for women, Catholic women. She's top of her class. Brilliant, on her way to get her PhD. My dad just pulled out the rug, said, "No, come home." The only job she could get in 1968. No, was it 68 or 66? I think 66, because I was working at the Fillmore, and I was Allen Ginsberg was my roommate. So anyway, I came home, and my grandma's there, and I'm helping her make eggplant, and because I come home, help grandma cook, and she would make 5 trays of eggplant. One we'd have for dinner, and the other 4 I would take home. And I would bring all my laundry, they would push the button. That was the first thing I would do. They would come get it. I'd help grandma cook, and my mom would come in, and she would bake. And she too would bake. My mom wasn't a great cook, but she's German, amazing, amazing, amazing baker. So she would have these kuglens and bread, right? And again, she would make, one loaf of bread for dinner and one, kuglen for fruit kuglen for, um, dinner. And the other, she'd make 2 loaves of bread and 3, because of all the brothers and sisters I had, because I was never there, and because I never really caused them ever even to think twice about me, because I was never there. My mother really liked me, and when I was a little kid, that year and a half that I stayed there, I could read already, right? But then I got murdered by things, so I couldn't really talk. So she was trying to teach me. I could already read. I could read Latin. I could read Greek. I could read Hebrew. And we're reading Stuart Little. So she's reading it out loud, and she is, and she's, got a buzz going on, and she would laugh hysterically to the point she pissed. So she loved being a party girl and being stuck with my, you know, I want to be a millionaire father, which my mom was down with because she wanted, to live like that and not have to work. And and my brothers and sisters were all shipped away. Um, so we had fun, except when I electrocuted her every now and then. And she would, and she would be really pissed for a week or two, and then she'd get over it and think, well, that's my boy. He's going to be a rocket scientist, because of that and my mom's connection in the Catholic Church. She got to visit with the Pope a number of times, just her and the Pope. Meaning, when the Pope came to America, when he met the president, he wasn't just meeting. He was at the UN. He met the president and a few other guys. When he met my mom at St. Patrick's, it was just my mom and the Pope. I mean, that's what kind of juice my mom had in the Catholic Church. Right? That's why I was going to be a rocket scientist for the when I was a little peanut with my grandma. Everyone said, "Well, he's interesting," but gave me no because I was with grandma. But once I went there, and then I got murdered by a nun, and then I went into the sanctuary with the Maryknolls, and these guys gave me every test, and they said, "Wow, this guy's IQ is." I had an IQ then. I'm sure I've whittled it down between now and then, but my IQ was 210. I mean, that's like, and I'm still am a naive, innocent guy. Meaning, I did not think anything. Oh wow, I'm full of woo woo. Hey guys, the three of you, come on, let's have some thumbs up. Let's get some more. Wouldn't it be nice to have a few more folks? So who's there? Hey Bob, Frederick, Frankenstein, FF. Good to see you, buddy. So let's get some more people in the cadre, right? Let's get some more thumbs up. Let's get some thumbs up. Come on. Because without the thumbs up, they don't expand me into the algorithm, right? So that was my childhood, and it was a blessed one. I mean, the dark side was trying to murder me all the time because when I was born, the doctors there were about to pop my head off because the umbilical was wrapped around my head and I was a breached baby, and they're trying to pull me out with salad tongs and you know this doctor who's a female doctor, she just showed up. These guys were like in charge because my mom ran the hospital back in the day in the 30s. She ran Roosevelt Hospital. And so she had a lot of pull. So she got the quote unquote best gynecologist. And these guys were smoking cigarettes while they were delivering my mom. My mom was smoking too. They were all smoking, right? And my feet were blue, right? And they're still trying to drag me out there. And so, I've had this issue about, I got hung at birth. And then when I was 8, I was like murdered, strangled, and crushed by a guerrilla nun. And she was known in Auschwitz as the milkmaid of pain, meaning she would torture men by squeezing their nipples and breasts until they gave milk, until the fluid. Because men have, they have breasts. They if they had the right hormones, they could give milk. That was one of my little ideas of getting rid of war. If men breastfed babies too, they wouldn't be so quick to send their kids off to war. So anyway, I had this amazing. And what it is, I had this naive ability to have my 20. I always knew my 20, I always knew my 360. After that nun killed me, I was really aware of someone looking around. Like I was with this guy the other day, and he took me out to lunch because I have no money. I have zero money. Come on, put some money into PayPal. I have zero cash. So he took me, hey, I need you to do this. I said, well, I can't. So he had to bring his big truck to get me because I didn't have the money to put gas in the car to go see him, which is only 6 miles away, right? So I basically, he came and got me, took me, took care of his biz, and he took me out to lunch. And he took me to Golden Corral. He likes Golden Corral. And Golden Corral ain't bad, right? Now, the way Golden Corral is, you have to come in and pay before they let you in, right? That's their business plan. You pay. I just walked through. They didn't even see me. There was no one online. There wasn't. The lady was just there, and I said, "So it's in here, right?" And she goes, "Yep." And she didn't say, "Oh, sir, you have to pay." I just walked in, right? I found a nice table. I sat down, and you don't get the table until they put the check showing that you paid on the table, right? So I went over to. I got a plate. I filled it up, and they had really nice vegetables and had really nice fish. So you don't get the silverware or a table until you have the check showing you paid. Well, I basically filled the plate to the top, took a really nice booth, sat down, and there was a check on it, right? So this lady comes over, the waitress, she comes over, and it's not my check, but she thinks it is. She gives me tools and says, "What do you want to drink?" And I tell her, and I said, "Oh, let me see your palm." Right. So I tell her a palm, and she like starts to cry. Right. I tell her things that, and she goes off and gets the stuff. Right. And now the people whose check it was, they had gone up to get food, and so they come back and go, "This is our table." And by this time, the lady comes back with my drink, and she picks up the check and puts them on a table that has chairs. That's not quite as comfortable as the thing. And she goes, "No, this is your table," and says it in a way that don't even think about it. So the guy comes in. He goes, "Where are you? What?" And he's like looking all around because he says he came in, he paid, and then he's looking for me, thinking maybe I went to the bathroom, or and he's looking around, and then he comes in looking around, and he sees me at table already scoffing the food, and the waitress is like standing right there, talking to me, like not taking care of anyone else in the section. And he sits down, and she goes, "He's amazing." And he sits down, and he goes, "How do you, how?" And he's like lost for words because he's got the check and he can't understand how I got my drink. I'm already eating. I actually have the silverware and it's there for him too. And and for the rest of the time we're there, not only is that lady is like our personal waitress, just you need more of this, you need more of that. What do you want? I'll go get it for you. I see you can't walk. And so everyone, all the other old people are getting annoyed, right? And then she tells all the other waitresses, "Oh, you gotta go talk to this guy." So I get all other waitresses, right? Um, standing and giving us whatever we freaking want. Now, Golden Corral, you aren't supposed to leave with food, right? Unless you pay extra for that. Well, I took one plate and ate only a third of it and put it over there, and then right. So I had about 6 plates on there because I tried this, I tried that. The vegetables were great, fish was great. The rest of the stuff was fried and gooey, but still, that meatloaf was pretty good. I give it a B. The Their rolls that when they're hot, they're orgasmic, and they had pot roast, and the pot roast was actually pretty good. And the pot roasty kind of vegetables that was in the pot roast, uh, goo, were quite yummy. So I had about 6 plates. So they fixed up 5 styrofoam things and put it in a bag, and then the head person came over, gonna, "Hey girls, what are you?" And oh, Bob, hey, read his palm. So I read it, and Bob like sat down and talked with us. And the guy who's a businessman, head of this, head of that, he came. He says, I've been coming in here for years. They treat me like dirt. How do you do this?" How do I do it? I am nice to people. I go out of my way. Whenever I see anyone, I think about them and not me. That's why I said, "Let me read your palm." Right? So that's how I roll, right? And I died in 2014 and I was ready. I was gone. I was toast. I was almost 600 pounds. I was like, oh. And I was up there. They had the big party. They had the big life. Oh, and everyone's patting me on the back. "You've done such a great job. But my master, Akatsuki, he comes over. You're my son. I have great pride in you. Everything I see you do, it always makes me smile, and it makes the creator smile. And that's you are what everyone else should be, and yet you're a freaking moron." And he starts to laugh, and he goes, "So, what's your plans?" It's like after the guy wins the Super Bowl, "What are you gonna do now?" "I'm going to Disneyland." I said, "I'm going to Disneyland. I'm going home." He goes, "Well, you can do that." And I said, "Why are you saying that in that tone of voice?" He goes, "Well, you've done an amazing job for about 89% of what you agreed to do. You still have another 11%. Now you can go home now, and that's fine. There's cake and balloons and hats waiting for you. But after you've rested up, had a really nice vacation, and gone played golf with um, the great creator and all the rest, you're going to have to jump on the karmic wheel and get shot back here at, you know, zero. Well, not quite zero because you've done such a great job. Yes, you'll be a lucky bastard. And yes, you'll have a similar kind of experience you've just had, right? But wouldn't you rather go on back and finish up that 11% and then move forward? You won't have to be a meat puppet again. And I was like, Yeah, okay, I'm okay, yeah, okay. I've done this 6 times already, died, come here, talked to the gang and got a pep talk and gone back. He goes, "Now, when you go back, it's not gonna be, you have spent 20 years in hedonism. You weigh 600 pounds. Not I'm 5'89". Thank you very much." And he goes, "Everything costs." So when I came back, I was on a gurney being wheeled into an operating room where they were going to crack my chest, give me a quadruple bypass, and cut off my legs. And I sat, and they had the fentanyl in my arm. Fentanyl was invented to knock you out. So when they did crack your chest, you wouldn't wake up and go, "Oh, where am I?" I woke up and said, "Where am I? What are you doing?" And I looked around and I said, "No, no, no, no." I right immediately knew where I was and what I was up, when they were preparing, because I worked in the medical world. I was an EMT, as a surgical EMT, meaning someone's pulverized by a Mack truck. We would do whatever it took to keep that person alive, give them a trach, lines, you name it. We would do things. We had technology in our little wagon that was not like the average um, ambulance, right? We had these pants that we'd stick them up and blow them up and would push. If they were like their guts hanging out, we'd push everything together and keep the blood inside them, right? So they wouldn't bleed out. We had a lot of interesting apparatus, and we were more a military entity than just the average, volunteer fire department. So I got very well trained. So when I was in that, I knew what they were going to do. I saw all the tools. I saw the chest spreader. I mean, I've done that before. You know, the guy's about to die. You defib them. You do everything you can. The next thing to do is crack their chest and massage their heart until you get to the hospital. We were trained and, um, you know, had the technology. We got the technology. So I did that twice. So when I saw that thing and I saw that other thing, I saw the bone, like the skill saw, I knew they were going to chop my. I said, I didn't sign anything. You touch me with a blade, you draw any blood from me, I am suing you. I'm going to own this hospital. That guy who said, "Oh yes," he wasn't my lawyer. He did not have the power of attorney. He's my client. You told him I'd be ready to work for him in 3 weeks. You crack my chest, cut my legs, so I'll be dead. I won't be ready to work for him. You touch me. By God, as God is my witness, you are not going to be happy. I'm going to own you, your children, your dog, their children, their dog. So they rolled me out, you know, because I couldn't believe. I mean, I had so much fun on they could, and that I was using my outside voice, meaning straight into their subconscious. They were like, "Oh my God," So shot me back into the IC, put me on the machines, and and I was awake. I was consciously awake. I said to my client, I said, "Listen, you want me to finish up this job. You're desperate for that, right? So you told these morons to do it, but you had no authority. That was like, you want to lose your license, you want to lose your life, forget it. No, what I do need, because I am still in one piece, I need you to get me a real good ambulance with real good EMTs that can keep me alive. Period. These guys, that's the thing. Keep him alive and take me down to your little hacienda in the Florida Keys and get me a colonic therapist. Get me herbalist. And I gave him a whole list of all alternative and regular. I needed a endocrinologist. I needed a whole bunch of blood work and real deal, not these guys, the real deal. So he did, because his little bank depended on me being able to take care of his problem. And then, in 3 weeks, I had a whole week, I had a whole month, right? So I had about 2.5, 3 weeks to be able to get it to be really alive and not just kind of alive. And so they did. And man, that colonic therapist was the best. It sucked everything out of my colon, from the birthday cake from when I was 7, and and everybody else, just took every toxin out of my blood, acupuncture, you name. They just, and I was still, 500 and something pounds, but it had changed my everything so much. My body was coming into homeostasis, and he got me this really, Ferrari electric wheelchair, and got me some nice, comfy clothes, and that were clean, and then rolled me into, and they, my colon was squeaky clean, right? So, and I was only eating very little, just things that would give me ultimate nutrition, not, cheeseburgers. And I had a chef who was, endocrinologist, and he was, and his wife was, um, both super duper educated in healing, and this was their gig, right? And so, you know, I was ready to go. I rolled in there. I took care of him. I got like 40 grand. He took care of all the bills, and he let me stay in his hacienda in the Keys with my dogs until spring, right? Which was quite nice. And he let my medical staff, he paid for them. So he gave me 40 grand ish and took care of the bill, right? And twigged up my car, right? So I got back to the school that John now has. And the hill is a psychogenic creature. And that's why John is so, wow, because it has no idea what you really want or really need. It'll give you whatever. I want to be upset and miserable for the rest of my life. Well, it will do it, right? The only person on that hill who ever connected with the hill as I did was Inga. It made her joyous, and she lived to be 103, right? Everybody else, got there who were pretty okay, ended up drug addicts, suicides, miserable, terrible. And, nobody there had a happy time. And the people who are there now aren't having a happy time. The people who bought the stuff from Inga, now I bought the thing from Inga because I had the money. And, I had sold a piece of property because I know the market was going to collapse. So I pretty much sold all my commercial properties um, and I had to buy another piece of property that was, I had to spend at least this much money, right? Now, Inga, and, once I knew Inga from the 60s, and then I met her in 2002 or something. And she, or 2001, just after, 2001, 2002. And it was just like we hadn't seen each other for almost 50 years. And there she was. And it was like, I just left her. It's like we picked up right. It's like, you ever had a friend like that? That was good for me. And her husband, who was, George was George. And, but it was just her, and her kids were, her son was like wacko. And if you ever go back through the history of my, I have about 2,000 shows. I think they stopped counting them at 1,400. A year and a half ago they said I had 1,400, but I did another 1,000 since then, and or at least 500, if not more, somewhere between 1,000 and 500. And it still has the same number. It still has the same number of subscribers. But I know because when I finish these shows, it shows how many people have watched, and then there's another algorithm I can look at who sees who watch it again, and I see that somewhere between 80 and 500 people watch the show within a month period from when it's made, right? And that is on the backside of the algorithm that most people don't look at, and the major algorithm doesn't look to see to where to put you, right? So I'm like, they've kept me down on the farm, which is fine because you three are quality, right? And Dr. Frankenstein here, and whoever else is watching, and there's probably another 17 watching, right? So these, people don't realize these shows are shamanic ceremonies. Why do you like these so much? Why, after you see them for the 15th time, why am I watching this over and over again? And you don't watch it like, it's like you play it like in the background, like wallpaper. So many people have commented, I just leave them running all day long. I hit the thing and it started over here and it just goes through. So anyway, if you go back, and when I saw that it said I only had 1,400 shows, I said, "What this?" And I went back and I looked at it. I spent like a day looking, and they were all there. It wasn't like they got rid of them; they just weren't counting them. So there's one where Inga's son, Mike, who's in Germany, he's nothing, you know, and he went over he joined a cult in America of a guy in Oregon, and when that crashed and burned, he went back to Germany because he could speak German and he speaks Russian. A smart guy, and he hawked himself out as a healer of sorts or psychotherapist, but he has no documentation. He doesn't even have what's the word? I forget. It'll pop into my mind. But anyway, and he is like so nervous about his authority, and because his father put him down all the time, he is just a mess. So he has to be this calm, cool, I'm a shrink kind of guy. Now I work for a lot of those guys, so I know the ilk. So anyway, he can, and every time he would come visit his mom, he would think he'd have to take care of, fix things, blah blah blah. He hadn't been here. He's the man. The authority, blah 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 blah, and he would screw it up. Right? I remember one time he came. He bought a brand new $2,000 riding lawnmower. He rode it twice, and he ran it into a rock, and just that was the end of that. Then they had this Kubota tractor, and it had a he was trying to put the it had lawnmower things that you stuck on the side, but it had a backhoe. I mean, it's a really nice Kubota, little Kubota, and he ruined that. And he ruined both. He ruined about $20,000 worth of equipment in less than 48 hours. And that's what he was. He was like, the first time I met him was middle of a hurricane, and he was down on this road picking these vines out of a culvert. And he goes, if it gets clogged, it'll run, rush the road away. And there was so much water, and it was shooting through that culvert like a fire hose. You didn't have to do anything. But I'm looking at him, and I'm trying to say, "Yo, get out of there!" And he, so noisy, he couldn't hear anything. And I knew that he was in flip flops and shorts, and I knew that he would slip, and it would shoot him through that culvert, and it was like about that big, and it would like slice him up like string cheese. And so and then I'm looking at where he is, and I see that he is in the midst of a what you call it. The vines he's pulling out is poison ivy, and so I see this limb, and it's hooked. It's like a hook. So I go over, get the limb, and I put myself in a place where I have the leverage, and I just pull him out, and he's like pulls back about 4 or 5 feet. And I said, "Listen, buddy." And now he can hear me. I said, "I'm Al." "Oh, you're Al. Yeah, you're up in this. Yeah, and you're at the apron." "Yeah." I said, "Mom says you're really good." "Yeah." I said, "Listen, you want to die here and have your mother have to deal with that? No. Let's go. It's a hurricane. Come on." I said, "Look at the water. It's shooting there through. Nothing's going to stop that water. It's not going to. If it was going to wash the road away, it would have done it already." And he kind of looks at it and goes, "Okay." So he goes up there, and he gets in my car, and I drive him up there, and I put like a tarp over a chair, and I said, "Sit in this," and then I kind of wrap him up in the tarp, and because he's just covered in poison ivy leaves and goo and stuff, and I don't want any of that on my car. I don't want to have him to contaminate my vehicle because my vehicle at the time was relatively new. Anyway, so I drive him home again, man. I said, "Let me hose you off." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You're all covered in goo and stuff." "Well, you know what you," and I just kind of, and he got really pissed off about that. I said, went in my car and I got a bar of uh, Napa brown soap. I said, go in that shower and just lather yourself up and wash it off. Lather it up because you were in the middle of poison ivy patch. I know what poison ivy. I wasn't in poison ivy. I said, okay, but here's the soap. I got a bunch of these. Here's you can have one, and so you know, he goes in and he's like, going on about this and that and this and that, and his mother and I just kind of go in um, into the kitchen, and you know, we she has this thing always in her refrigerator. She called it Grand Canyon. There was always like some cheese and sausage and bread, and she pulls it out. And when she turns around and we make some nice hot chocolate, and we come back, and her son has gone off and fallen asleep on the couch. He doesn't go into you know. Luckily, I hosed him off enough to where he's not contaminating. But he didn't. That oil is still on him. And I said, Inga, you know, um, and luckily that couch he had was like covered in those plastic things, right? I said he was totally saturated in poison ivy, and you should get him when he wakes up. I'm going to go back and leave you here. We'll eat some, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to check on everything and make sure it's ship shape because it's a hurricane, right? So she goes, okay. Anyway, I go up there. Next day, it's a beautiful sunny day. I call her up and phone, everything good. Oh yeah, I said I have got stuff to do downtown. Do you want me to get you anything? And she goes, yeah, you can get this on that thing. I said, how's Michigan? Well, he's still asleep. Because anyway, so I come back with the stuff she wanted, and I said, so where's the guy? She goes, oh, he's in the hospital. I said, what? He says, yeah, he woke up and he was sneezing and choking and couldn't breathe. And so he called up and they came and got him in an ambulance. And he said that the doctor who's taking care of him has never seen anyone with a case of poison ivy like that. Because it's not on his skin, it is in his whole body. He's in a pressurized tank and they got him on super duper jungle juice antibiotics. And he's going to be in there for at least, a month. And that's because he didn't want to deal with the issues of being with his mother. And so when he got out of there and he was a wreck, I mean, his body was just messed the frack up. And he flew back to Germany. He spent all of an hour and a half with his mom. And so she, this goes on for another 10 years. I buy the school because she has no money. He's not giving her any money. Her rich daughter, who's pretending she's rich, not giving her any money because they're spending all their money to look like they're rich. And I and her husband, who's basically trailer trash, but a very nice guy, who's trying to pretend he's rich, uh, you know, and this is what the world is going through. But if you go way back, and I don't know, maybe some of you remembered it, there's this guy screaming at me, and he's got a clipboard with all the things he's really upset about. And I'm just sitting there, listening to him and asking him very specific questions that just drive him insane because there's no way that he can argue about it because it's very specific and it's very what it is. And he hates that. I don't get mad. And he's like losing his, and it's hilarious. So, and he's kind of bald. So, I'm seeing more and more people act that way. Right. And so, as I started off with the story with the policeman who pulled me over because I pulled in front of this other guy who drove around me, screaming at me and shot off. Anyway, so he's talking to me and he looks in and he goes, "What are you homeless?" I said, "No, I got a place to stay, but I'm camping, so I got a lot of stuff that I don't get wet in here. And when I'm on the road, I have everything I ever need, no matter what it is. It's all in here." And he goes, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm an itinerant scholar." He goes, "You're a teacher?" And I go, "Well, I'm a sensei." You mean you're a teacher?" And I said, I'm a griot. "You're a teacher." I go, "Yes, she's my grandma was a teacher. She was great. I loved her so much." And he wouldn't talk about his mom because she wasn't so great. Anyway, so we had this big conversation and about his family and about his kids, and I read his palm, and we're now into it for 20 minutes talking that way. Where he hasn't even asked for my license or my registration or any of that. We're just talking. So listen, he goes, why I stopped you is that you kind of blew through that stoplight. I said, I just came from the eye doctor, and I mean, I can see, but I'm like, anxious about all and I don't know if I'm going to see very much longer. And he goes, I understand. And he goes, I lost my sight once as a teenager, and they said I'd be blind, and then it came back. And anyway, so I was just hitting on all the right cylinders with this guy, and he finally says, "Well, I pulled you over because that guy, we have been keeping an eye on him. He's kind of crazy, and he's had a number of road rage incidents, and we have, just keep an eye on him." And so you keep an eye on. So, well, he's done a lot of really not the best things, and we can't ever quite pin him down. So he's like losing it. So we're expecting him to not be able to get away the next time he does something really terrible. And so because you shouldn't do, you should be more careful. And he goes, but since I've stopped you and talked to you all this time, there, because he not only has his little TV camera, so they're like got the video of it, and not, and the microphone is on. Those cops, they're in jail more than the people in jail because they're always being listened to. Not it's going down on the tape recording, but not somebody's there listening, but he can be checked up on. And so he goes, I've already been contacted with, and it was not somebody, but the algorithm said, hey, you spent 25 minutes doing this. You should have gotten the ticket and driven away like 15 minutes ago. So, and we haven't gotten any data from you, about who this, who is this, Anyway, so he goes, listen, you got your license? I go, yes, I do. Here, license. You got your registration? Yes, I do. You got your insurance card? I said, well, in the state of Tennessee, you do not have to carry your. I said, yes, yes. He goes, do you have insurance on this vehicle? I said, yes, I do. He goes, well, if you know that law, then you know that in our computer, once I type you in, the insurance company has hooked up to us and tells us whether you have insurance or not. And so if you have insurance, you're free. If you don't, you're going to have to get a ticket for not having insurance. And I said, sounds good to me. So he comes back. He hands me. He said, yep, you have insurance. And he goes, it's been a great pleasure. You really, because I talked to him about his kids and his older son and a lot of things. And I said, you're a great man. You're great. You're doing great service. This is what a policeman should do. And you are being the great example. And you're going to go far. How long have you been a policeman? 4 years. I said, you're going to be, chief, and you're going to do great things. And he said, and he gave me his card. I gave him my card, and now we're best of friends. And that's how you should be with the police. Wherever I go, I become best of friends with police. Right? I lived in a town in Virginia where I lived in an apartment house where all the police who weren't married lived in that place. And they would come and get they would want me to read their tarot cards and their tea leaves and their palms all the time about this, that, and the other thing. So, and that was a police, that was a corrupt town. I mean, it was, you could be, if you went 1 mile over the speed limit, they give you $100 speeding ticket, right? And, but if you knew the cops, you could fly through that town at 100 miles an hour, right? So that is the lesson of knowing your 20 and your 360. Be consciously aware of where you are and what you're doing, right? So I'm going to flag off. I haven't been able to do a show bit because I have no money to drive anywhere. Seemingly no one's staying here, so I came and, but before anyone shows back up, what time is it? Look at that. Magically, 444. Yeah, see, I love it when it happens. So remember, I need something in that PayPal. I really love it. More thumbs up. Tell more people. Come on. Let's show them, the power of love's co-creation. Come on, guys. I mean, that's the only thing that's going to pull our fat out of the fire because they are wanting us to go to, they want nuclear war. They want, to lose. They're going to starve to death 1 billion people by this time next year. Between the weather and the supply chain and the war in Ukraine, it's going to be a lot of dead, starved people. Doesn't have to happen, right? And the only way it can be fixed is through prayer and us being love's co-creation. Every day and every, take the piece of the earth in every day and every way. Take the piece of the earth and make it stronger through love's co-creation. You are the decider. You are love's co-creation. Be your best. Not, oh, I'm going to try. Be your best. Get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail, dudeawake42 at Gmail. Come on, send something to PayPal. It doesn't have to be $1 million. I'd love that. I would, I could go and do some pretty groovy things if somebody really sent me some money. And guys, all of you corporate folk that I've worked for, you know my skill set. Yes, you replaced a good deal of the old skill set with algorithms. I've been replaced. When I got better enough to work again, I took out my little black book and called up my clientele, and they said, "Oh, we replaced you with an app." No, there is no replacing Al Bob with an app. If you think that's true, good luck with that, right? Now, I was happy, so, 4 years ago, I got to a place where I was no longer kind of dead or almost dead. I was, as my endocrinologist said, I am the healthiest dead guy he knows, right? So, and then I had 3 very nice years of being out here. I mean, I'm living in heaven. Yeah. So I live on $400, up until this, gas thing and, the supply chain thing and this, inflation thing, all artificially made, and I'm still happy, so I don't have that much gas, so I can't leave. So I live in heaven, so the annoyance level of the rich people has gone down by a great deal because they get bored here, right? So they have, I don't know what they're doing, but they're not annoying me as they were. And the crazy guys, like the guy who, I cut off and then, I'm not running into as many as those because I'm not going out. And when I do go out, I am brought to the people who need, like, and my rich business friend took me out to lunch, and he could have laid a Benjamin on me easy, but he thought taking me out to Golden Corral was good enough because he wanted to go. And that's, now I took care of his little problem, not so much for him, but it did things for his business that made the people who work for him better. So it was like, getting 5 birds with 1 stone. And I like him. I mean, he is a trip, right? And I know I'm going to push him off, and he is going to, he is in a position to really do some amazing things. And I'm going to be the guy at his back and keeping him alive, and because everyone does. I mean, yeah, that's why I like him. Everyone loves him. He's a pretty powerful guy in this neck of the woods. That's one reason why everyone loves him. He's not a jerk. He's not an asshole. But he, like I said, could have easily done that, but he didn't, and that was fine because when I didn't need it, because today I cleaned out my wallet and I saw I had $30 magically. Didn't show up in the PayPal, but okay, so now I can put maybe, and the gas price is coming down, so I can put maybe a tenth of a tank of gasoline and go have 2 or 3 breakfasts. But this guy wants me to do more stuff, so he will feed me. At least he will feed me, right? Because he likes going out, and he loves talking to me, right? And I'm starting to bring my photo albums, and he loves to see that. He like so, and he couldn't stop telling everyone about what I did at Golden Corral. He just couldn't believe it, right? So it's all good. It's always all good. I'm never upset. I'm never, oh, poor me, right? I'm not, and money does not make us happy. Service to love's co-creation is what brings us joy and happiness. Right? Okay, gang. Until next time. And if I can do it again, I will. I don't have a phone either. I can't call up the guy and say, hey, give me the schedule. Who's going to be here, right? That would be nice. if he didn't watch this, and he said he would email it to me, and I can, as long as I get Wi-Fi, I can get my email. I don't need my phone per se, and my phone works on Wi-Fi on the internet, but not as a phone, so I can't call people. So anyway, that's the show. Okay, it's going to be hit 1:30, and when it hits 1:30, I'm going to say arrivederci because nobody's there. And who else was here? Ryan Hall, just stopping in to say hello. I love you guys. Thanks, Dr. Frankenstein. Ryan, RH. I salute you, my cadre. Well, not our cadre. The we and me. And so say we all. And guys, you get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42. I can email you my novels, which will change your rigging life. I sent one off to a shrinky friend of mine, and he started to read it, and he said, I can't read it anymore. Can't read it anymore. I said, why is that? He goes, well, it's showing me what I do in the rest of my life. I can't take it. He used to tell me, I'm so powerful. I could put anyone into a mental institution. Oh, that sounds nice, yes. And so you want me to work for you? Fuck you. I mean, I'm still his friend, but I'm everyone's friend. I never give up on a friend, meaning I'm not giving up on humanity yet. So, because you're all my friends, right? The cadre, all our relations, we are working through the Burning Bush's whip, work in progress. That's what the Burning Bush is. And we are the Burning Bush's mirror to reflect what's going on. So look in the mirror, gang. You want to have change, look in the mirror. Love you guys. Oh, look at that. 1:30, 1:31.